Hi there, my name is Jasmin Junger, also known as Kuschelemmel, all over the internet actually, for example on YouTube, Instagram, Facebook and DeviantArt. And today I'm going to explain to you how to light a scene. For that I'll take you with me on a live recording of my artwork called Silver. On the left you can see where we start from, and on the right is where we end up after 1.5 hours. After that, unfortunately, my computer decided to run out of RAM, so the transition from this point to the finished product will be a recap at the end of this already quite long tutorial. I hope you'll enjoy it nevertheless. So, since this is a tutorial on lightning and glow, I have already prepared my layers for this project. You can see all of them are separated. The crows, the sorceress, the background and the sky. So normally what I want to do is to start with the background and match the background's color. I've already started this by using some curves, as you can see here, before and after. I'm not going to go too deep into these kind of things because I want to be able to show you how to make your work glow. But for that, what we need to do is to adjust the light overall. Because at the moment, as you can see, it is super bright everywhere. And what we need is to have really great contrast between the shadows and the light sources. So for this, first you need to figure out what you want to have as a light source. So first, let me show you on a new layer what I want to do. I want to have some blue lights here, maybe something like fire, not quite sure yet. I would start with something like fire. Maybe we can also add some brushwork, some magic symbols or something like that. Maybe something here to make a nice circle and to add to the overall composition. But this highly depends on how it will look, so I'm not so sure about that now. What I also want to do to give it a second light source is to have her holding some flames here. Maybe more of a fireball or maybe flames. I have to see. Actually, I don't know at this point, but these are the light sources that I want to have. So with that in mind, we can start to put in our shadows, because this is the first thing that you will need to do. So if this is going to glow heavily and this is going to glow heavily, of course the shadow will be at the opposite side. So let's start from the back. So if I get rid of the crows and the sorceress and I'm just looking at the background, I will have these blue flames here. And then I will need to see that everything where you cannot see the flames, or where the flames will not touch on not physically, but where the light of the flame does not touch the surroundings, and there you have to be a bit imaginative and think of this as a 3D space. So basically where the light is going to be in the end will probably be something like here, really here, of course, very much here, maybe a bit here, on the left side, of course, as well. And then down here you will already see, if you go here, probably it's going to be in the shadow from this pedestal. So what you will get is light coming here, light coming here, light hitting this surface. Here needs to be a bit more shadow, light on on the edges of the steps, something like that. So let's prepare this to start with. Let's go to the background, add a new group, and check out some flames that we could use. So what we are looking for here is something that is bright flame, best on a black background. And you will see in a minute why that is so. And something that has no edges, or that we can easily take out some of the edges. So we could put some of the coals at the bottom, but I think since this is going to be more like magical fire, I'm not going to go down that route. I would rather go with something, say like this. So I'm just dragging it over so it will show up as a smart object, and without even placing it, I can go to the screen blending mode and voila. You can already see, make it smaller, you can already see that this might fit very well, depending on how small we can make it. Maybe something like this would be great. Maybe even touching the flames a bit. So like this. I would just keep it like that. And because normally I would just keep it as a smart object, but since I'm not quite sure if my machine can handle all the smart objects together with the recording, I will do something that I would normally not do, because I want to be able to scale it back up without losing any information. But in this case, I'm pretty sure I want it like this. And I have to save on the scratch disk space to make this possible. So what I'm going to do is actually, with a bit of a cringe, rasterize the layer. So now, and I'm going of course to put it in here. Now I'm going to add a layer mask. Go to my gradient tool, touch and hold down Shift, and of course undo. Of course, as usual, I managed to take the wrong one. So what I want to do is to take the linear gradient on reverse, set to black to foreground color to transparent, and then again once more like this. So this will vanish. Here the same, everything down there will vanish. Here something like this. And I think that's all the edges that we can see currently. So if you want to refine this a bit, which I usually want to do, you go in with a soft brush, and in these instances it is kind of nice to have a tablet that's pressure sensitive, so that I can now go in and just dab a little bit and let the pressure sensitivity do the rest. So like this. Now, and just switch to white. I can already see it's a bit on the slow side today. Switch to white and you can paint something back if you think you missed or you took away too much. So something like that. Maybe I'm holding down Control and the direction keys to nudge it where I want to have it. So something like here. But of course I said I wanted it in blue, so we're going to make this blue. And of course there are a million things that you can do to change color in Photoshop. There's the hue saturation adjustments, or selective color, or whatever else you would like. In this case, since there is a different color hue in the light tones, more like a yellow tone, and in the dark tones it's more of a dark red. I would like to go also with a gradient for this. So what I'm going to choose is the gradient map, and I'm going to clip it by holding down the Alt or Option key and just hitting in between. So now you can see this gradient. Just click on the gradient in the right corner, and now you can change it to whatever. So now this is a black and white one. Let's start with that, where you can see that now everything that used to be dark is black, everything that's white or light is white, and all the grays in between. So I want to keep the darks in the black range so that they will vanish from the screen blending mode. Then I want to add some blue, dark blue. On the light side, maybe something, yeah, I think this looks kind of nice. Maybe we need to go in here, of course not with the same color, but maybe with something also rather saturated but lighter, something like this. And now we can change the points here and see how we would like to have our flame behave. Let's see if it makes sense to have some really bright highlights. Yes, I think it does. I'm not using, on purpose, I'm not using completely white, because that's always a bit tricky. Nothing is really super white, and nothing is ever completely dark. So this is, and I think we can maybe keep it here. Maybe this needs to be a bit lighter too. No, not really. Less saturated. Yeah, something like this. And voila, we have a blue color. Of course we will change it a bit later. This is just a starting point. This is definitely just a starting point. So what you can see is the before and after. So what I want to do right away, just because I want to know what colors I'm going to end up with, is a color balance level, a color balance adjustment layer on top. So now I can crank up the cyans, because I think the greenish cyan tones lend itself more to the hotness of the flame, and blue always looks a bit, pure blue looks a bit too cold and too doesn't pop enough, I would say. So in the midtones I'm doing this, in the highlights maybe even a bit of the yellow, or a bit of the more blue actually, and more cyan and more green, and now it really pops. Now you can see if we want to do something to the shadows, but I don't think so. So this I like much better. So let's name this Flames Back. Now we can go on with the lighting. So first I want to put in the shadows. For this I'm going to show you again what we said before, where the light is going to hit, because basically this is where the light is going to hit, and the other side is going to be where the light, where the shadows should be. So what I want to do is open up another group, add a new layer, put the layer on multiply, well, not on the new group, but clip to the background group. Makes more sense. And now we can use either a big round brush, or what I really like to do is to go in first with the gradient tool and then choose my background or something from the background as my shadow color. Shadows will never be completely black, so you should not use black and white and grays to paint in your highlights and shadows. Always take something from the existing image and use that instead. And then what I like to do, maybe we need to get out here a bit. If you double click, by the way, on the hand symbol, it's going to go to as big as the screen allows, so that's kind of nice. So this time let's use the Radial Gradient, because here is our light source and it's going to get darker as we go out. So what I'm going to do is simply a big gradient like this. So now this effect is a bit too pronounced for my taste, so I'm going to dial it back a bit, and I can always go back because these layers are non-destructive. I can always go back later and adjust what I think needs adjusting. So another shadow that we will need, and this time I'm going to uncheck the reverse box, is down here, and it's just basically going to be a rather, I'm going to go back to multiply, a rather circular shadow. And because I want that on the floor, I cannot get used to the new transform tool. Now in Photoshop 2019 you have to hold down the shift key if you want it to get out of perspective, and if you want it to keep the scale, you don't have to do anything. And it used to be, for like 15 years it used to be different, so please bear with me. This is going to be an ongoing issue. So what I would do is like put it somewhere here and see that keep this middle in the middle of the pedestal, just because it's going to be more symmetrical that way, and skew it a bit, and then let's go in. Okay, lower the opacity a little, and I think what we also need to do is duplicate and get it a really dark shadow here. And this one needs to be reaching further down. Something like this, maybe. Yeah, but it doesn't make sense that this would be darker than that. So what I have to do is go back in this one and lower the opacity, something like that. And now basically what I would always do after the first few changes have been made like that, I always use a brush tool and paint in where I think shadows should be. And I usually use it on low opacity. I recently learned that flow might be better, but I haven't really tried it yet, so also bear with me, old habits die hard. So for the first pass I'm going to keep it on multiply, put my opacity down, have a soft brush, and my brush is set to be pressure sensitive with my Wacom tablet, however you pronounce that one. So what is definitely going to be really dark is here, the back side of the statue, probably here some shadow from the wall still. I have to be a bit slower so that my computer can catch up. Maybe I should do these recordings on my laptop. So then I'm going over these And basically you can be as, you can, well, let's put it like this. What I always do is to do these rather broadly and zoomed out, and just checking that the overall shadows are where they should be, or are where I think they should be, maybe. Maybe that's, okay, need to wait again. Oh, this is going to be a long video, I can see that. So I put in the shadows where I think they should be, so that the overall look fits first. And then, when I have done the first pass, like this, I will check if I want something a little bit more dark even. For example, here I would go with a bit more dark. Here I would go more dark. Here. I mean, you can do this super scientifically, and if you want to do it super scientifically, I would highly suggest watching Aaron Neace. That's the guy from Flern. He was on an Adobe live stream that you can access on YouTube recently, and he had some great tips on how to spot what is off and where to put the shadows and so on. How you can spot it if you cannot do it by heart. But so I usually do this by the seat of my pants, and this I think would be the first pass. So if I show you the before and after. So maybe I want to go in here and make these a tiny bit, get rid of this layer, make these a tiny bit darker, just so I have a bit more room to play with the actual highlights later. So something like this. Now, what the multiply blend mode does is basically it turns all the pixels darker. So it will give you a rather flat appearance of the shadows, which usually is something that you want, because if you look closely at shadows, you can see that the contrast in the shadows is not as great as in the light, which kind of makes sense. And the multiply blend mode takes away some of the contrast. So this is basically what you do when you go in the first pass like this. So, and now I'm going to force myself to stop and go on with another layer, which this time I'm going to go in a bit more. And first, what I have just realized is, at least on this side, there's a rather prominent halo from the cutting. There was just some fringing or some light spill, the way the camera took the photo. So what I want to do is, before I do anything else, I want to fix this. So I'm going to turn off these shadow layers, and I'm going to use one layer set to either color or hue. I think we're going to try the color one first. Go to a smaller brush, something like this. Then grab a color from the actual image and go over the edges. Maybe I need some more opacity so it won't take until Christmas. Check out, you can see it's, of course, it's still lighter in some parts, but it is no longer purple. So this is the first order of action. On this one, I think on that one it's fine. Yeah, it's fine. So before and after. Now I turn these back on and do what I wanted to do, and that is to use a shadow layer on soft light. So in this case I want to do some tweaking of the shadows. So I'm going to use a darker color from, as before, something from the blues. Give this also a bit of a bigger brush, but not too big, because I'm going to go for the details now, and I'm going to be on soft light, and I'm going to brush some more shadows. And now you can see that these shadows have a distinct, or more of a blue hue than what we had with the multiply layer. And the reason is that the soft light will always take the hues more prominently. So it will darken, as you can see here. It will definitely help to darken some spots, and there you can really go in and get the parts that are not facing toward the light to be really dark, and you can accentuate any forms. So I'm going in here because this is deeper, going in here, this is deeper, taking a bit of this, so something like this. And the same on the right side, just so, just to show you that you can. So here there's a bit of a crease. You go in here. This needs to be darker just because it's further away. And that the blue again comes in from the background really helps tie in everything, because the colors should match as best as you can in the end. And here too, I mean, this under this rim there will be practically no light. Some will be caught by this, maybe some of the ambient light, and then it's going to be really dark down here. So you can go through like that, and there you can see it. There comes some of the blue also. Often when you have a light color that is blue, you would see some oranges or so in the shadows. But for this, I'm choosing to be blue in the shadows also, for one, because I am going to have the second light source that is going to be orange yellow, which is the complementary color anyway. And for two, it's evening and the sky is dark blue, and so everything will take on this blue tint. So, and again, you can be super, you can take this as far as you like. And if you have even a different hue in the back, I would highly suggest to go over the rims at least of your cutout, whatever it is, with a color on soft light with a color from the back, just so it ties in nicely, because it will always have some color tint from the ambient light. So I think for now I'm satisfied with this. Then we have the flames, and for the flames, what I want to do, because if you look closely, you can see that because these things here are all set, because this layer is set to screen, you only see the light parts, and because the back is not completely black, you lose some detail here in the dark parts. So what I want to do is to go in also on multiply and paint this part really dark. And maybe I'm going to change the color later. We have to see. Don't want to go over the rim here. Just so it gets some more pop and some volume, because it cannot just be, I mean, there has, okay, it's magical fire, so I guess technically that does not have to be anything actually burning there, but still I think it looks a bit better like this. And maybe we can fix some more of that at a later stage. So I'm going to also get here some. And I want to bring this layer underneath the statues, so I don't have to worry about overpainting the statues or this thing here. So let's leave it at that for now. The only thing that I have just seen, and this is something, I mean, people think that you start with one thing, you finish it, you move on to the next item, you finish it, you move on to the next. But at least for me, that is never the case. When I zoom in, when I pan around, I always see something that might not be to my liking. So in this case, I'm on the layer mask of the flames, and I'm seeing these bluish tints here. Not the sparks, I like the sparks, but this other stuff left over from the screen blend mode, and I want to get rid of it. So I do it now, because if I wait, I'm going to forget, and then at the end, when I maybe upload it, I'm going to kick myself for not being thorough. But, well, maybe that's just me. Now, since it's no longer in the same group, I'm going to rename it so I can easily find it again. Otherwise, some chaos at least is kind of programmed. So calling it Shadow Blue Flame, just so I know where it belongs to. So now let's zoom out and check. I think it looks kind of good for now. Now, there's two things that you can do, and it really depends on your personal workflow, or for me sometimes it depends on the time of day. You can now either keep going through creating the shadows that need to be there for everything else, or you can now create some of the highlights. And I think in this case we're going to go with the highlights, just so you can more easily see with the one light source and only these two statues. It's easier than having everything at once for the demonstration. So what I'm going to do is to use a really small brush, because now I'm going in, picking a color from the light, something here, maybe something from the middle, and then I'm going to go on soft light, maybe a bit bigger, and I'm starting to brush in some blue tint. Now, I like to do it like this, step by step, figure out where the protruding features are, like the chin, the nose, maybe here a tiny bit. Go in And of course here, I mean, it should be rather blue. This is also on, this gets light from this part, so you will need to brush in some light here. And this is not the actual bright light, this is just for the color tint. So what I'm going to do is be rather liberal where I apply it. If I don't like it, or if I want to tone it down, I can still blur it a bit, or go in with the eraser for some parts, whatever helps. So this can also get some blue. This maybe, this claws, some of the, and here you have to basically figure out where would be the shadow of that. So what I would also do, I'm holding down Control and making a new layer below. I'm going to do this extra shadows and blue light, so you can better see what I'm doing. And I'm forcing myself not to care that it's written wrong. Okay, let's try soft light. Going with that shadow, needs to be a bit further here. And then at some point it goes into the light. So I'm going to get rid of some of my blue. So something like that. And back on the blue. And sometimes you just need to, it does not have to be the very same color throughout. I like to keep it somewhat the same, so in case you find that you need to change it using hue saturation, you change everything in the same way. But depends really on your workflow. And this is also something that I cannot tell you enough. There is no right way or wrong way of doing something. If you have a certain habit and it works for you, then by all means go right ahead. If you find that you want to try something new, which I recommend now once in a while, because only then we can find new techniques and new things that we will be really happy with. I mean, if it works, it works, and if it doesn't, it doesn't, and it's oftentimes really a question of personal preference. And especially if you are doing this as a hobby, I don't think you should stress yourself out over the right way of doing something, or if it's super perfect. It probably won't be super perfect. If you look at some of my old stuff, it definitely wasn't perfect. But it was fun. And if you would like to have somebody else look at it that is not your immediate family, you can always write me a message. But please, only if you really want some honest advice, because honestly, when it comes to my hobby, I don't do diplomacy very well. I'm sorry. Which is not to say that I will be rude, but if you come to me saying you want some critique, you will get some critique. So now that I'm through once around, like here vielleicht, maybe no also. So what you can see is before and after, that it's really blue in some places and not so blue in others. So what I like to do is to go out and just use the eraser to get rid of what I don't like. Could also blur it a bit, as I said. Here I think I don't like it on the cheeks. And this is also, it's mostly a personal, let's say an artistic decision, and at that point not so much driven by where it actually should be, because who's going to say, I just want some smooth transitions so that it doesn't look so painted in. So I think that does it for me. And now I'm going in with one more layer blue light. And now you can, there's different things that you can do. What I like to do, and now I have clipped this again, I'm going to unclip this actually. Because what I like to do is to use screen blending mode or hard light, depending on the image and on my mood probably. And go in with more or less the same color. I think it's already rather light, bit more like this maybe. And then go in with a really small brush and go over the edges. And what this does, can you see this? It starts to glow. And this you need to use really sparingly, because if you go around, or if you were to use a layer effect on this, for one, the layer effect would never be able to catch this rim light, but also it will put it everywhere regardless how close you are to your light source, or if you think it makes sense, or none of that. So what I'm doing is the parts that are closest to the light source will get this shine. Like this. So something like here. And here, and here, this, and just a little bit. And again, if you find that it's too much, you go in with the eraser. You can also, of course, do it on a layer mask if you're unsure. I have there are times when I do this like 15 times paint, 15 times erase, and the 16th time I like it. So practice makes perfect. So I'm going in here, I'm going to add some light where I think it's the most extruded areas, so they get a little shine. And of course, if you look at it, this ear, you can debate whether this needs to have a shine or not. But hey, I felt like it, so it gets a shine. And the same on the other side. And what this does is it ties the whole beast into the background. It makes the edges seem less harsh. Of course, you can also do that by blurring your mask or however else you want to do it. This is, again, this is a very personal style choice, I would say. And so going here, maybe a little here. This doesn't seem to be getting as much light as on the other side, so fine for me. And here a bit. Of course, this will get some shine. Like this. So, and of course you can do this again. You can do this forever. I'm going to use a new layer just because I'm not so great at these horizontal strokes. But on the other hand, I mean, you could do this by stroking a path, and then it would be perfect. But I think, at least for my style, it looks nicer if you do it with brush strokes because it has this more or less handcrafted look. So this is what I'm going to do. And also, if you think something is a bit too harsh, you can always go and use that blur tool. So something like that. Probably not going to see much. Oh, strength not even 40%, so probably not going to see much. But anyway, just so you remember that there's more options than just going to the filter gallery and blurring everything into oblivion. You can actually do it here really selectively. So I wanted to take the eraser and take off this stroke that I made. So let's check this out. Here maybe also a little. So, and if you look at it in small, you can already see they start to glow. What I also like to do lighting wise, which I kind of totally forgot, which I normally do a bit earlier, is to have a colored gradient over this. So let's go into this group, add a new layer, go to the gradients, uncheck reverse, and let's just take that light blue for now. And then you can check which blend mode you like best, or if you maybe need to put it behind the flames. Usually hard light is quite nice, but that I probably would put behind the flames. Though in that case, since they are on screen, it doesn't really do that much. But okay, let's keep it on 100%. Go to Control U, brings up the Hue Saturation dialog, and let's see if we want to have this darker. Yeah, with blue it's always a bit tricky. Less saturation maybe, and a bit in the, yeah, should still be blue. So something like that, and then we lower the opacity a bit. And now you can see the before and after, and now it's actually starting to give off a glow. What I want to get rid of though is a bit of the parts down here, because this will not be that glowy blue. So to keep it to only the background, I'm going here and holding down Control or Option on the Mac and clicking on the thumbnail of my layer to select the outline of the layer. So now I can go on my layer mask and with a soft black brush get rid of the extra blue. And I will keep some on the edges, because the edges will get some light spill, but not everything. Okay, and I have to be patient as my computer catches up. So, and if you hold down Control H, it will hide all your marching ants, all your guides, all your outlines of transformation layers, everything. So the selection is still there, but it's not marching. And so you can see a bit more clearly what you are doing. So something like this should do it. So I'm going to hit Control H again, just so that I'm not surprised that nothing is happening. I'm going Control D for deselect. And now before and after, think this looks better. You could also now unlink the layer mask, Control T to transform it, and then I would go up here and transform it from here so that it will transform around the midpoint, and then you can see that if it's a bit smaller, actually I like that better, and the mask will stay the same as before, so this is really neat. And then I link the mask again, because if I want to nudge all of the layers, then the mask will not nudge with it, and will give you a headache searching for the unlinked mask if you have a lot of layers. So I think for the first part we have lit this. What I would probably do is to add some more shadow in the clouds, but this can also be done in the end when we see how it looks, how the whole composition looks. Then also I would go in and add the last highlights. Now it's time to finally get around to our model. She's the next, let's say, next plane, next layer. And this, by the way, I wanted to give a huge shout out. This is the lovely Gabrielle, also known as Silence in Silver, both on DeviantArt and on Instagram. And she has some really kick-ass stock. The quality is a bit on the grainy side, but the poses are absolutely awesome. So this is the stock image that I used. And as you can see, unfortunately, the shoes are cut off. So I decided to just make the whole coat longer and hide the shoes. So this is what I came up with after a bit of painting. I hope it will suffice. I also cut her out already using the pen tool. And here you can see she's a bit on the grainy side, so I will have to do some corrections on her fixing this. But for these, I think I will just put you on pause for a while, because it has nothing to do with the lighting stuff. Alright, I'm back after having fixed some of the issues with the grain. What I have done, just in short, is I have added a smart blur, and then if you right click on the smart blur, you can edit smart filter blending options, and this is going to take a while, and then you can lower the opacity or even change the blend mode. So what I did was to lower the opacity. So now what you get is this smart blur that leaves these jagged edges, but it does get rid of some of the grain. What I have done then is to add a hue saturation layer, and this is set to multiply on 50%, and with less saturation and colorize, so that it also gives this blue cast of the whole scene. So what this does is basically make everything on her darker, which will help later with the incorporation of the shadows as well as with the grain. Then I added some overpainting layers, because I was not really convinced that this was looking good. With overpainting, you have to be a bit careful that you don't overdo it, so that she doesn't look completely blocked in or painted in. I think I could have done a better job, especially here. There is no information left on her arm. It looks like one flat surface, but I'm going to show you how to fix this with the lights when the lights come in. On this side I have already painted in some more of the creases, just by adding some lighter colors where the mountains of the creases should be, more or less. So if you can see before and after. And then I have another small layer with some adjustments that I did on her skirt, because it's the same for the skirt on the right side as for the arm. If you leave that out, there's basically just one black surface, and I know that as soon as I put some glowing whatever into her hand, there's going to be color cast down here, and this makes it easier for me to think about where the mountains and the valleys of the creases are going to end up. So this is the basis that I want to put my work on. And as I said, I usually don't finish something to the end and then go to the next step. So if I see that this is not enough, I will just go back. It does not have to be perfect. It's going to fall in all together in the end. And at the moment, we're just going to leave it at this stage. So now let's make a new group and get some flames in. I'm choosing these ones because I really like how these flames go up and how these flames make a bit more of a shape. So this time I'm going to just take it in like this and set it to screen. And now you can see, especially if you put it on her dress, it's super cool fire. What I'm going to do now first is that I did not want to do. I wanted to right click, rename, and get the name of the stock artist, because otherwise I will definitely not remember, and everybody should have their credit where credit is due. So now I'm going back to the layer mask, back to my gradient layer, set to linear and reverse, so that where I start will be transparent and where I end it will vanish, just like this. And then I'm going to just go over a few times, something like this. This is approximately what I want to end up with. And this is supposed to be in her hand. So now I'm going to go and convert this to a smart object. Since I personally do this a lot, I have actually put it on a shortcut key. For me it's Control 1, and I have whatever usually is Control 1, I have switched out for it because I never used it. So now Control T to transform, and I'm keeping my hands away from the Shift key. God, it's a hard habit to break. And now maybe a bit bigger. But since it's a smart object, we don't need to worry so much about if it's good now, if we really like it, or if we need to make it a bit bigger later. I'm just going to put it somewhere here. And then I'm going to duplicate this and move it to the other hand. Now maybe, I mean, if you want to make these different from each other, you can always use a completely different image. But since I do not have another one of the ones with the cool flame whatever, I'm doing a little bit of distortion and hope that no one will notice. Well, of course they are going to notice, but it's not that super obvious then. Maybe I'm going to distort the other one too. And this is also something nice when you have a smart object. I just committed this. If I go back, Control T, and into this, you can see it's still the same. So everything is non-destructive if you are working on these smart objects. So I'm going to maybe take that, make this a bit broader. And then in the end I will mask out some of those flames so that it does not look so super similar. But first I'm going to need to add a layer mask. Go find my girl, load the selection so that I can see where the hands are. And now I will need to mask all the fingers that are toward me. That should be visible because the flames are in her hand, and this is a bit hard to see. So basically they should be coming out here, this part. This can be behind that one, and this. So there's different ways to do this. I'm just going to use a brush and mask it. You could of course also make a new selection using the pen tool or whatever you fancy. I'm just going to go in with my brush also to see if this is approximately right. Yes, it is. And also we don't want it, actually we don't want it here at the ring probably, because it's coming out of her hand like that. So this is also something that I can do here rather well. So again, press X on your keyboard to switch between foreground and background color, and then just paint it back in where you think you need it. So here it's coming out of her hand. Now I'm making my brush smaller and trying to get rid of just this one finger again. And an opacity of 100% might help do the trick. So getting the rings. And it's not too bad if there's a bit of a halo here, because the light will spill. So I'm actually painting in a tiny bit of this around her finger, just like this, really carefully. This will help bring it all together, and on this one a bit more because it's more from the middle. And there you just, basically you have to use your discretion. You can of course start to analyze this scientifically till kingdom come, but I think at some point you're just going to know when it looks right. So I'm going to deselect, and unfortunately we now have these harsh edges, but it's also 200% view. Well, they're still there. Then let's go once more with white on the layer mask over these. Might have been a better idea in the first place to do the light spill without the marching ants. without the selection, because this way I can also see much better what I'm doing. So, well, lessons learned for next time. As you can see, nothing is ever straightforward. So, going around. Now what I want to get rid of is this part, because it really does not look like they're coming out from her. So I'm just going to pretend they're coming out of her finger. There, that's better. Now that is much better. Now we take off some of these. That, and now we just need to make this also say glow by itself, like we did for the blue flame. I will just quickly fix the other side of the hand and be right back. So right hand is fixed, though what I really don't like so much is that part. What I'm going to try and get it fixed is to unlink the mask, go on the layer itself, hit Control T, and then maybe I really like how this flame seems to come out of her thumb, but the rest I'm not so sure. And I think it should be connected to the index finger, because on the other side we also have the finger throwing the flame, more or less. So I'm going to keep it here, make it a bit bigger, and as you can see my mask is still in place, and now I can just try and get the positioning that I like. Okay, I think for now we'll leave it like that, and now I'm just going to quickly fix the mask, because now there's some stuff spilling out, and this I'm going to fix in another manner in just a second. So, okay, now as you can see, there is fire, there is no actual fire hue, no actual glow to it yet. So first thing I would do, maybe we're going to just make a second group and shift the mask to the group. Maybe we'll change that in a minute. We will see. Go to the gradient tool. As you can see, the gradient tool is one of my biggest friends. Color pick, and wrong side. Get rid of the reverse, and again. So now you can also really well see the mask, and now you have some options. I think hard light always looks kind of nice. Hard light behind, yes, hard light behind. Yeah, maybe that is better, and give that one an extra mask, and Control U, change the brightness. I would rather do this in a few layers than just have one layer that kind of hits everything over the head. And I want this to be a bit more orangey, so let's do it like this. And a bit lighter, yes. Now I'm going to make it a bit smaller. And now I'm holding down Shift. Ah. Maybe I'll get the hang of this after all. And now I'm holding down Control, so I can confine this a bit. I need this to be a bit longer, something like that. And I'm going to give it a mask, a gradient, reverse, so that it lifts off or gets less pronounced at the upper part. And then I think for now we can actually leave it on the hands. I would go in with more shadow on the hands separately. And then I will go in and paint some more highlights, especially here. So for that I'm going to use one of the lighter colors on screen. So, maybe change that to hard light. Yeah, that's much better. That's better. I mean, with all of these things, there's not that one option that you have or that one thing that you should be doing. As you can see, you need to experiment a little bit about where you want to put something, how much of which color, and so on and so forth. And again, I'm going in and out and deleting what I don't like, but I would say somewhere around here, pronouncing the fingers a bit more, here as well. And I think for now I kind of like that. Though I have to say that this part of the glow I really don't like that much, so I'm going in with another. That was maybe too much. If you find that you would rather have something in between, you can always go to Edit, and here will be the last thing that you used that you can fade. So this is one of my specialties. So I'm going to just fade this to 50% and done. And there you can also see in the layer mask it's now 50% gray. So if I want to, I can always take some more out here to real black. So I will do the other hand later. For now we will just concentrate on what you have to do now that you have this light also in. So you have a light from the back that is blue, and you have this light. Now in some spaces this light will be brighter than this, and so for the hand itself, and probably for this part of the sleeve, and for this highlight here, where again it's basically, you think you have to remember where the shadow is coming from, so you have this as a highlight. Why does it not? Ah, so yeah, this as a highlight, and you go from here to this, to the dress, to the arm, to the side of her jacket, and of course also to her face. And now the question is, which part of her face gets this light and which part should get that light? And if you look at this, then probably on top of her head, maybe as a sort of rim light like that. This should be blue, maybe a bit here, on the upper parts of her face, but anything, and especially if it's shielded by her hair, but her hair will surely pick up more of these orange colors in this here. And there you can mix some. You can go a bit like this. And this is also, it's in part trying to figure out where the shadow and where lights really will hit. And in part it is figuring out which light source will be brighter. So actual physical 3D things. And then there's the other thing that is your personal artistic preference. It probably, depending on how realistic your style is, if you are someone who would like to make this look as if it could be real, then you should put more effort into putting the shadows and the lights where they should be. But quite honestly, I do a lot of highlights in the final pass that I don't think really belong there, but they give my work sometimes this painterly feel. So, well, it's an artistic choice, and don't be afraid to step out of the comfort zone or out of the box of what you think there should be, because after all, the photo manipulation is there to help you create your vision and not just to mimic a photograph, because if that were true, you could just take a freaking photograph. So in order for you not to have to watch me do every stroke and do everything on the other hand, I'm going to speed up the video. So it's showing you at 5 times the speed, the actual speed, and I'm pretty much just mirroring now what I did on the other side. Adding some more highlights on the hand now. What I always do, try to do at least, is to keep my layers somewhat organized. So I'm actually closing the groups and renaming the groups just so I know which side is which, and I don't have to look through all my layers to find something in the end. And as I said before, also name layers that are outside of groups. Next up, I'm adding a series of soft light layers. At the moment, I'm adding some blue from the background and from the blue flames in the back to her forehead, to the top of her head, basically what I showed you with the sketch. Here I'm trying to figure out where the creases should be in her arm that catch the light. And I'm using a lot of soft light layers for this. You could also use hard light or overlay depending on how pronounced you want the effect. I like to start with soft light, especially if I'm not completely sure what to do, or if I'm using very strong colors, and I think especially this red, orange, yellow combination of the flames is a pretty rough color to use, so I like to keep it on soft light for quite a while. And again, some of it is just testing where I think it looks right. You could analyze this to bits, but well, as I said, it's more fun to do it by the seat of your pants. Maybe if you are not that great at it, analyze it once and then do it by the seat of your pants. I don't know. I'm also adding, as I said, with great highlights come deep shadows. So I'm also adding these in, and I'm adding the shadow below her dress because otherwise she looks like she's floating. Could have done it before, can do it now. Main thing is that you don't forget to do it at all. And as with the previous edition of the highlights, I'm going to go out of the clipped layers now. Here are some cleaning up. And I'm going to put in, well, in this case I'm using hard light. You could use screen, or then the color would not shine this bright red. It would be more the color that I actually chose, this orange. Really depends on the effect you're going for. I think for fire I really like to use hard light, just because it gives this glow. And here I was trying to use the blur tool, but my computer did not really like me using the blur tool while recording, so I settled on using the lasso tool and the Gaussian blur. Adding still more highlights on soft light, adding some strands in the hair on soft light as well, and always, as always, erasing, adding, erasing. That's just what I do. Really depends on your own workflow, I guess. So here I am on a normal layer, and I'm adding some strands of hair because I realized that I did not put any extra hair on her head, and she looked like she was wearing a hair helmet. That's at least what I call it. If you have this hard edge from the pen tool, and since I need some strands to be in the color of this bluish color from the backlit light, and some more in this orangey glow, I'm also going in with these, and I'm adding some more shadows again, and going in this time actually with the eraser to erase some of the shadows in the form of hair strands. It's also something that you can do. So this is more or less what we have now. And now I'm using some gradients to get some more ambient light on her dress. And this is going to be a super subtle thing, but it's going to help a lot. Now this looks quite good so far, though of course you can always spend more time, and I think I will go back to those folds here before I actually upload this anywhere, because to me it still feels a bit off, but for the tutorial I think we just leave it at that. What we should do though is, now that there is this fire and it is casting a glow, and it currently is only casting its glow on her. What it will also affect, of course, is the surroundings. And because she's standing quite a few feet toward the viewer and a bit away from this blue shiny thing, she does not get all that much of the blue, and they will not get all that much of this orange, though they will get a bit more of the orange because this, to me, feels brighter. Or I want it to be brighter, let's put it like that. So what we have to do is to add some highlights on these statues and on the ground. So for this we will start with the items furthest or closest to her, furthest from the blue flames, because those are going to get the most light. So this is our statue's background layer, and here we can just add a new clipped layer on top. And now I'm using soft light, and again color picking from the existing fire. And for the first base I tried to use the darker colors and be a bit more generous, and then go in with the lighter colors or the yellows to make the final popping adjustments, let's put it like this. So from this one we will probably get some light here and I'm going to be rather liberal here. Probably we will have to adjust this blue light. And this is why I usually do first put in the light sources and then start painting in not one light source at a time, but basically the way I then feel they should be balanced. Because like this you will have to go back a lot and change what you have done before. But if you are learning, then maybe this one by one approach is a bit more a bit easier to get to know. Okay, this is probably way too much. It's not going to glow that much. So I'm going in again with the eraser tool. And there also, I mean, some of it will be blocked by her, some of it will be just blocked because of the angle, and then it should taper off, because we don't, even if it were that bright, I really don't want everything to be bright orange in the back. So what I can also do, oh, it's going to take a bit. So what I can also do is turn her off so that I can see. Oh, that's cute. This would be a cool effect to try. Basically flames and no hands. Seeing how this looks. So I think there should be some, but not so much. No, this is, what the hell did I just do? Ah, I know what I just did. I need to save this and come back, because my computer is telling me it does not like this at all. No, not at all. Alright, I'm back. These things tend to eat memory, and if it eats too much memory, the pressure sensitivity of the Wacom cuts out. So this is what just happened. So now I think we can go and make here some tiny adjustments, just like this, just to get some of that glow on the back, on these griffins or whatever they are. Just a tiny bit, because they are a good deal away. I don't want to mess with the blue glow, because that's what's going to be prominent on these. And again, it's probably in part just an artistic decision. This is not the layer, this is not the layer. Ah, but on the shadow layer, this one needs another shadow. That's what I mean with going back in. Always. It's too dark. But something like this. I mean, strong highlights need strong shadows. Everything else would be really, really strange. So if you see somebody putting in a creating a scene in daylight and with the fire and so on, that's never going to work, just because it's I mean, you know that from real life. If you have a fire in the night, it's much more impressive than if you have a fire in the middle of the day. So it's the same if you put it in a manip, just that especially beginners tend to put a lot of highlights everywhere and don't remember that they need to put the shadows to go along with that. So let's see what we have. This was the layer. Yeah, before and after. It's a rather subtle effect, and as always it can be improved. And I think I'm reaching the edge of the frame again. What am I going to do with that? Yeah, in any case, this is basically what I do now. Since I'm apparently out of working disk space or RAM, I am not going to show you what I'm going to do with the crows, but basically it's the same thing. You go in, you try to match first, give them a bit of shadow so they match. For example, on that one needs a lot more shadow because this highlight, it just does not fit. And then you go in and add the highlights. For example, here on that wing I would add a highlight. Here should be with that orangey color. Here this would get some orange. Maybe I will rearrange the crows. At the moment I'm not so super happy with them. Maybe I'll find something else to put there. Some branches. I don't know. But basically the only thing that I want to show you in addition is that once everything is the way you want it to be, more or less, the finishing touches that I always do, I do them on top. I take a small brush, either that one that tapers out or actually this, because I know that it will stay at that size. I zoom in, zoom, and then I will put in the lightest highlights, because as you can see at the moment this is not actually the brightest part. And for that I'm going to use one of the really light colors and set it to color dodge. And this is where you need to be really, really careful, because that blend mode will be super strong. I can show you here. And you see this? Even painting with the Wacom, here where it actually should be really light, but you could see it immediately. And if you do this on somewhere where it's really dark, then you get super harsh highlights. So tone down the opacity, use the eraser, whatever you have to. And I only use this for the final touches. And I may also use another screen layer or color dodge, depending on my mood or the overall mood, or overlay, hard light, any of these bright layers with a super bright. Let's try overlay just so you can see something else. No hardness. And I will go in and even make it, and I'm going to make it a bit lighter, yes, but mainly I'm going to go more into the yellow for this. And conversely for the blue, I would stick with the deep blues first and then go to something super bright with the cyan touch, like the highlights that we painted here. And if you use that, you can see that you can actually put in some super bright highlights. And this you can also, for example, use on the hair in some spots to give it this shine that you often see. but if you overdo it, it will look super artificial. So take your time, build it up. Rather use more layers than less. And don't forget that as soon as you amp up your highlights, you should also try to get some more shadows in. And for me, what works really well is to use a curves layer. These are the bright spots. No, these are the blacks, and these are the whites. And this is the histogram of the scene up to that layer, because it affects everything underneath. So if I put it up here, it will look slightly different. But also there you see it tapering out to nothing. So 2 things I always need to do, because also my screen is usually it shows a lot of dark hues that, for example, on my phone I will never be able to see. So what I like to do is give it some more highlights, but not everywhere. I hit Control I to invert the mask, and then I can go in with my beloved gradients, and then I can do something like this, for example, so that only the light sources light up. And then I can do another curves layer and bring down the highlights, or make some more shadows. Also invert, and also go in like this. And of course it's exactly the opposite, so I hit Control I again, and this is what I actually wanted to do. And then you can also always play with this. This is how you would put in a vignette, a completely manual vignette. And if you go to the blue channel and you put this up, and you see how it goes blue where it used to be dark. So this is one of the nifty things that you can do. But these things also maybe a color balance layer. These I do at the very end to tie everything in. Then you can also get some quite nice color toning, not grading, but color toning. All right, I'm back, and in the middle you can see the image as we left it, on the left where we started, and on the right what is my final take on this image. So before I show you some of the layers and what I have done to the final image, I wanted to point out to you the main items that I tackled. So first, of course, I added light adjustments and more flames on the birds. So in order to make them fit into the background, made them a bit darker, got rid of some of this halo on the side. And then, of course, I added some more flames, and I also added some more flames on the bird here. Then the second thing that I did was to crop it. And for that, I also changed the position of some of the birds, mainly of this one, if I remember correctly, because I wanted to have her more prominently in the view and get rid of some of this extra space on the side. And then what I also did is to check out the depth of field in this image and to create a bit of the impression that this was shot on a low aperture lens with a lot of light coming in. So let's jump right into the actual PSD file. What you can see here is that I have grouped everything so that I can find it again, and on top are a few more adjustment layers. If I unclick them, and this is I think also a bit where we left off, you can see that it's very much on the dark side, what I did there is to put these in, or at least to put the level one in, as soon as I realized that it was overall a bit too dark, and then just proceed underneath to get the look that I wanted, and not to have to adjust everything on its own. So what I also did is to add some more flames, and I want to show you, especially on the left-hand bird, what this looks like. Basically, what we already had was this part, this part of the hand and of the flames, and I just added a few more to create the impression that the bird is just coming out of the flames here, and added some on the bird as well. And this is basically the same thing that we did. You put in the flames on screen. This is the wrong one. Let me see. Fire, crow above left hand, this one. So there you can see basically it's these three. So if I want to move any of it, I know where to find the layers that I need to move. And then, so some shine layers on hard light, the fire itself, and some more glow on the crow itself. I think this is the problem that we had before. So I will just show you the layers, unfortunately. So what else? So the next thing that I did was to change the crop. And when I changed the crop to basically exclude some on the left, on the right, on the top and on the bottom equally, because I wanted to get rid of some of this dead space. If you look at the first and second version, you can see there's a lot of space up here that there's nothing going on in, and the same goes for this part, except of course for the bird. So what I did was I moved this bird and that bird closer in to her, and I also moved this bird closer to her hand so that it looks also more like it came from her hand. To do this, it is very, very important to keep all your layers grouped in such a way that when you move something, then everything that has light and adjustments on the item moves with it. So if I move this one, you can see the fire moves with it, all the adjustments move with it. This is where the old frame used to be. So basically I can now move the complete thing, left, right, center, whatever, and don't have to worry about getting the light or the soft light layers on the bird from somewhere else. So yeah, this is quite important if you want to change your composition a bit later. Lastly, I want to talk about the lens blur, which in this case is not a real lens blur, because while there is a lens blur filter in Photoshop that you can find in the blur section of the filters, it is quite complicated to use in an image like this, because you would need to tell it exactly at which distance which bird, which flame and so on is located, and because we have so many layers in this one, it is just super impractical. So what we do instead is to use the Gaussian blur filter on objects that are further away from her, because she's in the plane of focus. So the further something is away, the bigger the amount of blur should be. So for example, you can see here, these are the flames, and this is the blur on the frontmost bird, and it has 5 pixels blur. So also what what I really like is when you use a smart object, you can go back in, you can check, you can say, okay, if this has 5 pixels, then probably this is 2 or 3 pixels blur. And also by holding down the Alt key and going on the smart filter and dragging it to a different smart object, you can simply duplicate the same effect and apply it, for example, in this case, to all the flame images that are also smart objects. So you can easily create this effect and don't have to go in and remember every single digit that you put in. What you can also do, and this is something that I can show you in the background for the statues, is when you use the Gaussian blur filter on the background and then you get a smart filter mask. And this is just like any other layer mask, just that in this case it can hide the smart filter effect. So in this case it basically hides here in this front part with a smooth transition, because I used my favorite gradient here, as I have done a million times and showed you. So you can basically get this blur not to reach up to the front in this case. And of course you could also do the mask more dependent on, okay, this is the front and from here it should blur more, or this should be blurred more than that part, or something like that. But also in this case I did not go that far. I think it looks okay, and I'm going to simply leave it at that, because frankly I don't remember how many hours I've put into this. So on that note, I think this has gone on long enough, and I hope that you have at least taken something out of this and was kind of helpful to you. On the other hand, I think if it hadn't been, you probably wouldn't be here anymore. Please let me know in the comments below if this was way too much information, if this was too dragged out. I just wanted to try something different for a change, and show you exactly how I do things and how messy it can be, so that when you do something that you can remember that nothing looks perfect from the start. It's a lot of small steps, and it's hard to see the difference between one and the other until you actually put up some work in progress shots from first hour, second hour, third hour, and you put in the actual time to make things look nice and look real, or at least magic in that case. If you did like this video, I would very much appreciate a thumbs up, and if you do like my other videos as well, I very much appreciate a subscribe. But I also know that I'm not your typical YouTube person uploading every single week. Usually I don't even get around to it once a month, which is a shame because I really love doing these, but well, full-time job and all of that, what can I say? If you have any suggestions on other topics for videos, please leave your thoughts in the comments below. Bye!